morning, sir. We will in today's class do with 3 topics. And we will have a discussion about in the meantime, I have sent to you one write-up on tribe caste continuum, if you had seen. Once you finish tomorrow's work, before Monday I want you to go through the topic of tribe caste continuum, then we will discuss about it in the class. We'll start with the Jajmani system. Make a note. S.C. Dubey considers Jajmani system as one of the three primary characteristics of Indian village. The other two being village political system of panchayats, and modern factional politics. Dubey being a political scientist, mostly reflected on the political systems of rural India. When many others, right in the next sentence, when many others examined Jajmani system from a traditional ritual and economic perspectives, he considered this mostly as a political entity, akin to AKIN potlatch systems, LATCH, potlatch systems, as were presented by Needham, Needham, that is the name of the thinker. We have come across this name earlier in the class. Needham, in the study of redistribution, as a means of economic exchange, in pre-agricultural societies, in pre-agricultural societies. Right in the next paragraph. It is a system that is interfamilial with inter-caste relations. According to Harold Gould, the system is patterned on the superordinate and subordinate relations between patrons, superordinate and subordinate relations between patrons and the service providers. Though this system was existing, since the ancient times, the formal nomenclature of Jajmani system for any intercaste, interfamilial, intergenerational, more or less a permanent relation, was given by Weiser. He described this system in his book The Hindu Jajmani System, 1936, based on his study in Karimpur village of UP. Right in the next paragraph. This concept was one of the major efforts by the American anthropologists to describe Indian society in addition to those of great and little tradition, universalization, parochialization, and tribe caste continuum. The rest of the concepts other than Jajmani system other than Jajmani system, aimed at studying social change, while this concept dealt with social structure of village India. Urban tradition was not inherently a part of Jajmani system. It was only considered as a chief mechanism that had brought change in the age-old Jajmani system. The focus was on narrating. The coherence and interdependence of caste groups that presents an integrational organic, self-sufficient nature of rural social structures. Right in the next paragraph. Wiser named the patron as a Jajman, and the serving individuals as Kamins. Keep writing there. These terms have been largely in use in several northern Indian regions. Initially, Jajmani system was considered in the context of relations between land-owning communities, right in the brackets, families and castes, close the bracket, and the Purohit community that maintained intergenerational relationship. In the later times, such a relation incorporated all other serving castes. All other serving castes. So take that list. These are some of the studies. Those that examined Jajmani system in different parts of the country. D.N. Majumdar in the villages of Lucknow district, Kathleen Guff in Tanjore, Weiser in Karimpur, Dubey in Shamirpet, Kolanda Khalapur, Oscar Louis, that is the book that he has written, Opler and Singh, another book there. I also have placed, I think yesterday or day before, H.D. Sankalia's contributions. थोड़ा सा लंबा है but now that very difficult areas are done with, we will try to run a bit faster, write a bit quicker, kind of things. In these topics, what is necessary is you should know exact meaning of the concepts and who has given in which work, maybe perhaps which time period. You should know to explain the concept as was done by the thinker and give a criticism. Whenever you are writing about any of these concepts, link them with what you have studied in anthropological thought. Right down. These studies indicated that a system that functioned almost on the same lines existed throughout rural India. With a different nomenclature. Throughout rural India with a different nomenclature. According to Weiser, though it mostly prevails in rural India, in the pre-British times, it existed even in urban India. It existed even in urban India, confirming evolution of such a system evolution of such a system from traditional agrarian society a detailed functioning of Jajmani's system was presented by D.N. Majumdar in his work Caste and Communication in an Indian Village, 1962. His study linked Jajmans with the entire cross section of castes in village. He found that the serving of families were generally paid in kind by the landowners who behaved in a paternalistic manner. Continue writing there. Sociologists such as Kolenda, Kolenda, Harold Gould, D.N. Majumdar, couple of other names are there, you can pick up from there. N.S. Reddy, Beidelman, and Iravati Karve. Presented features of the system as, number one, it is a relation between land owning and artisan castes. The landowners can be Thakurs, Rajputs, Brahmins, Okkaligas, or even a backward community that might be landowning or irrespective of occupation seeking the services of the other castes. Right in the brackets there. Who gave the Brahmanical origin theory of caste? Brahmanical origin of caste. Okay, write down. Write in the brackets. Abedubo's study of Kerala referred to Brahmins as major landowners. Close the bracket. The landowners patronage village craftsmen by regularly buying craftware, establishing a creditor-buyer relation. Secondly, Jajmani relations, according to Dubey, are between fixed families and involve economic rights that cannot be transferred. But Majumdar's study indicated that on mutual agreement, rights can be transferred. Continue in the same point. If a judgeman's family splits, the rights are distributed among the sons of a common family. Thirdly, payments are mostly in kind, such as food grains. In addition, Jajman provides protection to Kamins. In the study by Orenstein, in the villages of Punjab, he refers to the flexibilities in offering services by the artisans and village officials. He found that occasionally a single common family might be serving more than one villages and several judgments. Write in the brackets, village watchmen or security guards. Village watchmen or security guards. Write the fourth one. Jajmani relations. Jajmani relations, according to Majumdar, extend to ritual, economic, and political aspects. With the introduction of modern democracy, the major landowning economically prosperous and ritually higher Jajman families became the major beneficiaries. Right, in the next paragraph. The functions of the system are summed up as number one, according to Edmund Leach, the system maintains and regulates division of labor and economic interdependence of castes. Unquote. Secondly, for wiser, it serves to maintain Indian village as a self-sufficient community. For Harold Gould, it distributes agricultural produce in the exchange of menial and craft services. According to Beidelman, it maintains prestige of higher castes, and provides a stable labor supply. Those are in a nutshell. It is based on the ideology of paternalism. The system is hereditary, division of labor with difference in the scope of work, permanent relation, integration of castes, functional in several ways, goods provided against services, rituals, and satisfaction and peaceful relation. So when I ask you to read some topic from the booklets given or something, you try to make a note of them as well in your planner so that you don't miss out. The one that you should be adding maybe in yesterday's class or today's class is marriage payments, which I actually did not. Hanji sir, scope. Difference in scope of work. So marriage payments was one topic that you had to incorporate. Can I go? Ideology of paternalism, hereditary nature, difference in the scope of work, that is division of labor, durable and permanent relation, integration of different castes, functionality, exchange of goods and services, rituals, peace and satisfaction. Go ahead, sir. Right aside head there. Exploitative nature of Jajmani system. This was in the same terms asked in, I think, last before year's exam. Exploitative nature of Jajmani system. Traditionally, the system served the basic economics of rural India, consisting of both exploitative and protective elements. A huge volume of literature addressed exploitation by the landlords. There appeared a difference of opinion. In certain thinkers, such as Beidelman, who considered that Though carmines are exploited, by judgments through lesser payments, there are definite instances of judgment. There are definite instances of judgment facing situations of rejection of services, by the carmines. Continue writing. For Majumdar, Jajmani system that functioned on the lines of feudalistic landlordship resulted in bonded labor. Thirdly, according to Oscar Louis, the suppression of lower caste gave no choice for carmines to escape from the coercion leading to increased rural poverty. Right in the next line. Most of these views were opposed by Harold Gould and Colenda. According to them, write in bullet points, according to them, carmines are not totally dependent on a single judgment, as they are free to sell their services to the other judgments and villages. Secondly, exploitation of carmines and of judgments could be dealt with in the caste councils. Right in the brackets. Most often, the council in dominance would prevail the rest of the councils. Thirdly, the protective link between judgment and carmine is more real than simply being paternalistic. Continue there. The system helped. The system helped continuation of rural cohesion for a long time. Fourthly, interdependence of castes assures constant income and the system prevails not simply due to economics, but as a major social requirement, of adhering to purity and pollution principle. Right in the next paragraph. In the recent past, since the extension of land reforms initiatives, access to land became caste free and exploitation by the landlords was substituted by positive dependence between the castes. Those are some of them. Factors responsible for the changes in Jajmani system: modernization, modern education, urbanization, changing caste system, change in the hereditary occupation, westernization, industrialization, transport and communication, changes in economics, payments in the form of cash. Some of you are taking up the Group 1 exam. Many of you have written the exam yesterday. ఎస్ నో అలాంటిది ఏదైనా ఒక ఆన్సర్ ఉంటే అడిగిన దానికి ఒక విలువ ఉంటుంది అన్నమాట. if not visible to the last benches, I am reading again. Factors responsible for the changes in the Jajmani system: modernization, modern education, urbanization, change in the caste system, change in the hereditary occupation, westernization, industrialization, transport, communication, change in the economics, payment in the form of cash. From kind to cash. Previously it was mostly in kind. Now you are actually giving them a new kind of an option. New demand is created, that is cash. So when cash, its value changes from time to time. Your ability to purchase the commodities also changes. So you are now in a position to say that, see, the cash that I am getting from the landlord is insufficient, and hence I need additional avenues or I need a way out. There are two concepts that we are trying to do today. One is nature man spirit complex, the other is sacred complex. Both of them were given by LP Vidyarthi. This was the book where he was writing about them, the Maler. NMS complex in a hill tribe of Bihar, 1963. जी सर. Yes. Yes. That I am doing Hinduization of tribes. In Hinduization of tribes, I will add that. What is it that you know about LP Vidyarthi so far? చెప్పండి. చాలా గొప్ప వ్యక్తి. చెప్పండి. Extreme ethnograph, anything. Go ahead. Suppose you have to start an answer with LP Vidyarthi, you haven't done any formal lecture on him. Based on whatever you have heard in the class, you will have to write an answer. So what would be the best way to start with, based on whatever you know so far? Tell me. Was it an applied element or something else? Applied, and any other word that I have used for him? Action anthropologist. One of the first action anthropologists of India, who was not simply giving the concepts at an academic level, he was also trying to apply them on field and was trying to provide solutions for the problems in the field. That's what we do. I remember to have used this in a comparison. One of the classes we discussed applied versus action anthropology. I was giving the names of M.N. Srinivas in applied anthropology, and action anthropology was L.P. Vidyarthi. Those were the vital details. I didn't knew that you would forget such a thing. Anyways, that is your right to forget. This is my responsibility to remind. Anything else? Sir? Focus on tribals. A lot of focus on tribals. And one of the things he was studying was pilgrimage patterns and what had happened because of pilgrimages. And People from the back, sir. I always love to hear from you. क्या था? Super చెప్పినావు కదా. And okay, concept of industrial nomadism, impact of maybe industry. From there we can say perhaps that maybe impact of industrialization on tribes, maybe. And in your exam, at least one question will be there, which you will write from the bits and pieces that you had done in the class. At least one question, maybe a 10 marker, a 15 marker. కనబడలేదు, చాలా కాలం అయింది. అవును, చాలా యుగాలైనట్టుగా అనిపిస్తే. అండ్ అంతేనా? Okay, great. The earliest resettlement and rehabilitation policy recommended by him, that was happening at this particular place. Can I go forth? Anything else you want to say? Cheppinchalu inga kind of. Sometimes what happens is you propose a concept based on whatever academic or other experience that you have. You propose a concept and tries to look for this concept in the field, how it works. So some kind of academic understanding or some ethnographic work may not be done by your own selves. What you must have studied, what you have known of a society, based on that you might come with a concept. And then you try to see it on the field. On the other hand, occasionally it may so happen that because of your involvement with the field, you are coming up with newer concepts. For example, when we were referring to Malinowski, when he had studied the Trobriand societies, he started narrating that system called Kula. Till that time, though the system was existing, the people who were involved in the Kula itself were unaware of such an intrinsic detail in which the system works. So it was something like a newfound knowledge for the subject itself. That, see, it seems I am having such kind of a system. So it is here that you are narrating based on what you are seeing on the field. So first thing is, you may be giving a concept. You try to see how it works, how it applies to a particular situation. Second could be you are narrating certain systems or concepts that you have seen on the field. Thirdly, when there is a complexity in the field, there is a problem situation in the field, you are trying to bring some kind of an academic concept so that you are making it understandable to the people who did not know of this. Or maybe you would want to communicate it to the administrators so that they can know the weight of that problem. This particular thing belongs to the third category. So it's something like this. So that is the book, the Mahler. They are also called, the Mahler are also called Sauria Paharias. That is the other name. A word about Mahler before I go forth. Some time back we had used a term called moiety. When I was talking about moiety, I remember to have mentioned certain tribes, such as the Toda, where there were two moieties. I must have made a mention of Bhils, the purer and the dirtier one. Malers are also categorized based on their geography. Malers are categorized based on geography. In India, we see several tribes of this kind, where there is a plains version and there is a hill version. So hill version is called hill Malar, the plains version is called plains Malar. Though this description is not a major part of Vidyarthi's work here, I thought some bit of ethnographic information would really help you. He was elsewhere trying to understand this. Who is more evolved? Who is more evolved in the two variants? There are two fellows there. One is the plains Malar, the other one is hill Malar. Who could be the more evolved one? Plains fellows are more evolved ones, considered to be more cunning, more shrewd, when compared to the hill Malars, who are innocent, who actually try to live within their own cultural microcosm. And we'll continue from here. Why I am saying this is one of the reasons why the hill Malars, that's what is the name given there, NMS complex in a hill tribe of Bihar. So he was trying to conduct this study in the hill Malars, not the plains Malars. This was one of the reasons why they were not really happy to mingle with the outsiders. See, the problem which they were facing was, as you know, this is the 1960s. I mean, the study started in 1959. By the time he could do all the kinds of, he was not a person like, I go to study this particular tribe, I would finish it in said amount of time and go back. We don't even call him somebody who was inflicted by gold displacement. It is not that way. But then there are too many things that he picks up from the vicinity. And that is how, if he had gone to study Malar, several other tribes from the neighborhood also would become his subject matter. That was the reason why it was taking more than a longer time. See, by 1960s itself, an understanding was coming in the world anthropology that we are taking more than necessary time on the field. Because our predecessors said to us that we'll have to spend such amount of time on the field so that you understand the field comprehensively. So occasionally there used to be the count of the months also. You will have to stay at least for a year or 1.5 year kind of a time. So it was becoming a more religious practice there. So long time it was taking. So 1960s was a time when anthropology was facing this criticism that because that was also the time when many countries were getting independence and they were coming into the welfare state mode. And they were in need of knowing the impact of the review of the developmental programs at a faster pace. So they could not actually wait for such a long time, into which he goes and then he tries to establish a contact and does all kinds of things and learn the language, etc., etc. All that becomes an yesteryear's concept. So things had to happen at a very quicker pace. So 1960s was parallelly a time when people were questioning the kind of working of anthropology. And there was, look at your syllabus, chapter 8, paper 1. Research methodologies in anthropology, fieldwork traditions, distinction between technique, method and methodology, tools of data collection, observation, interviews, schedules, questionnaire, case study, genealogy, life history, oral history, secondary sources and participatory methods. These are the major ones that are given here. In participatory methods, there are several kinds. See, by the time we came to 1960s, newer kind of technology, newer kind of techniques and methodologies of research were coming into the discipline. One, we call it participatory rural appraisal. That is one of the participatory methods. Participatory rural appraisal. So if a question is asked in paper 1 about participatory methods of research, it is not simply a participant observation as we have seen with Malinowski. Generally, students restrict themselves to the Malinowski kind of a work. When I say participatory methods, it is not simply the variant that was followed by Malinowski. There is a modern variant of participatory observation which we call participatory rural appraisal. Participatory rural appraisal, APPRAISAL. Participatory appraisal. See, that was a time when conferences were conferences were being held in places like Indonesia. The list of conferences will be provided to you. The very first questioning of long-drawn participatory observation studies in anthropology was happening. And one particular conference was named as Rapid Rural Appraisal Conference. Rapid Rural Appraisal Conference. So I would want to say a bit about it and then go there. As the name suggests, the anthropologists wanted studies to be done at a quicker pace. See, after all, it is the survival question, survival of the discipline, survival of your job. If you are not responding to the crisis, you would be written off. So you will have to show to the rest of the world, to the other social sciences, that see, based on the time, we can also devise methodologies that are suitable for the situation. So in the rapid rural appraisal, several kinds of techniques were proposed. One of them was called PRA, participatory rural appraisal. There are several of them. The aim was that within 3 or 4 days of time, your appraisal of the developmental program has to be submitted to the authorities. Just imagine you are moving from 1 or 2 years of time to 2 or 3 days of time. You will have to have a specialized training in it. And remember, sir, whenever such kind of rapid studies were picked up, it was not especially for the tribal lot. Mostly this was happening in the rural populations. Of course, there is that very subtle difference between the tribal rural and revenue rural. Most of the rapid rural studies were conducted in the revenue rural side, not on the tribal rural side. That comes in the later stages again, after 1990s, when considerable amount of penetration of governance and authority happens into the tribal areas. So one of these RRAs, rapid rural appraisals, was that this was experimented by S.C. Dubey in Shamirpet village itself. He was following a particular approach wherein, see, I told you in one of our earlier classes that Dubey was into community development program. He was working in the commission there, trying to draw the plans and working out how different rural programs have to be devised based on the necessity, etc. So he was there in the background. And interestingly, he was also a field worker. This is a real rare combination. Mostly in India especially, we see that people at the planning level hardly had the kind of field experience that Dubey must have had. So it was like he was shifting from field to the desk and vice versa. That was a constant thing for him. So here in the Shamirpet village, he was trying to see how the community development programs were actually working. So on a pre-decided week, the major governmental agencies have to come together. Like he was working with 7 or 8 different departments there, like forestry, then you have rural development, you have transportation ministry, etc., etc., finance anyway should be there. So there were about 7, 8 different wings, along with the NGO representatives, if at all they were there, and then the political leaders, the village level political leaders, all these people would come together. See, he wanted to do it in 2 phases. First phase, his idea was that we should actually know from the community what they actually needed. But that could not happen at many places. Not even on a pilot project basis. The second one alone he could execute. That was based on whatever plan the government had done. Whether the villager here was able to get what was promised, what was proposed by the government, not that what the villager wanted. But then, in these 4 or 5 days of time, very active map formations were taken up, meaning resource maps, rural resource maps were prepared. Rural resource maps, how they were before the execution of the programs and after execution of the programs. What he meant by village level rural resource maps was that where exactly particular things are located, like the water bodies are there, fertile soils, differences in the soils across the village, and which caste groups are holding what kind of resources there. So this exercise would happen at the village square with the participation of people, so that you quickly can jot out the resource map and you see that whatever was proposed, and quickly within a 3 or 4 days of time, several techniques will be used by all these participant departments, including the social anthropologists and political scientists. They would ask questions or they would circulate questionnaires. They would conduct interviews and kinds of things. Whatever may be the technique that they are using in those 3 to 4 days of time, they would have to bring a report to the government what has actually happened because of implementation of one particular. So it is actually aimed at knowing whatever mistakes must have happened, or surprisingly unexpected success must have happened, kind of things. And this was a real-time, a successful way of doing things. So we are talking about that particular phase where participatory studies and rapid rural studies were happening, during which time Vidyarthi seemed to be an old school. He was getting into long-drawn studies, but his idea was very clear. We are talking about a community which is much less evolved when compared to the rural populations. And these are the people with whom we still had to initiate a lot of developmental activities. And one problem that Mahler was facing was that region was being exposed to the first level of major mining and industrialization, because of which there was a demand for resettlement, displacement, and rehabilitation. That was the time when we were starting to talk about displacement and rehabilitation. We did not actually have any proper policy as such. He was using certain terminology there to explain the ethnograph of the Mahler. The life of any community is a combination of the nature, spirit, and man. By nature, he refers to how the nature is providing them with the necessary survival mechanisms. By spirit, he refers to how, to what extent belief systems are influencing how one is getting the food. So I read out what I have written there. At nature, we said Khallu cultivation, KHALL, Khallu cultivation and Mahua cultivation. We have come across these words in the other class, I believe. By spirit we meant totems, he meant totems, and gosains, Gosyans. Gosains is the name used by them for their gods. By the human, he refers to the social systems, such as the institutions of family, kinship, etc. It was a proper ethnograph he was generating, a very detailed one. We are trying to take what is actually necessary for us. I'm trying to write something there outside this. There are people such as businessmen, government officials trying to intrude. He is reflecting on not geographical distance but cultural distance. These are the people who are very next door to us but then culturally isolated. Of course, the hilly terrain gave them protection to protect their own culture. He was referring to a population that was really skeptical to meet their own plains variant. One cannot actually imagine them to be really friendly with the other mainstream population. There are the other things that he mentions. That reminds me of one question that was asked a couple of years ago called the sacred grooves. You scribble it somewhere, we'll come back on this when we do the ethnographic profiles of people like the Bhils, and there are a few northeastern tribes that we will take up. Sacred grooves. Groves. I was saying that. From the ethnograph, we are trying to pick up the things that may be of use to us. The situation is known to us. There is a resentment for displacement. It's a very clear indication of how Boaz was presenting to us. Before going to the field, if at all you have heard of anybody else, you would go with the same kind of a mindset to the field. Government was hiring LP Vidyarthi for this particular task. And Vidyarthi was given a basic feedback that these people were really not cooperating because they feel that their economics will be at stake. Because once you are eliminating them from their region, they might go jobless and the kind of occupation they were practicing might not be available, might not be possible in the newer areas. That was how he got a feedback. So economics was the basic idea that he was given. Once he went there with that kind of a mindset, there are several things that he was doing. This is a very interesting thing that he would go personally to get the data. How many from the planning bodies would be doing in today's time? Going to the field firsthand and getting the information with due respects. I have written a few things there. Once he was there, his first task was to get the basic ethnograph. He found that this is a tribe that depended on shifting cultivation, slash and burn agriculture. Can I talk if you are through that? Generally, I think I come with an idea that I will talk about each of the points, so that after each of the point you will take down certain things. पर उतना सब्र किसको है? So a cultural adaptation has to happen to me based on the group that I am dealing with. Somebody was asking me that the 5 skull pictures are needed for Homo erectus kind of things. In the exam, you are not drawing 5 pictures, but for your own satisfaction, I will be providing those pictures. Especially when I give such kind of pictures, I think twice. I don't want the student to feel overburdened. See, when you feel burdensome to even draw one picture, when I am giving 5 for the same fellow, becomes a difficult task. But because somebody had asked, I will be definitely providing, but I leave it to you based on whatever your choice is. Yeah, let me talk. I was saying that this is a tribe that largely depended on shifting cultivation, that is slash and burn agriculture, which is mentioned there with the title Khallu cultivation. There's some problem with the color, I'm so sorry. Khallu cultivation, Khallu, that is the local name for slash and burn agriculture. He was trying to examine the reasons for this population choosing shifting cultivation as their major stay. The reasons he finds in religion. Religion does not give a sanction for plowing. You are not supposed to plow the Mother Earth. Whatever she gives, you will have to reap the benefits from there. So these are the people mostly depending on whatever the nature gives without troubling the nature. But that is insufficient for the population, and hence they depend on something else called mahua cultivation. These are those flowers which they dry and preserve. Ippa puvu antaru మన దగ్గర these are the dried flowers which they consume as a staple food. Consumed in particular ways is not intoxicating. In fact, the same mahua is also used to brew liquor. Within liquor also they have 2 variants again. One could be an intoxicating one, the other is a religious ritual one, which is a lesser intoxicating thing. So festivals are the occasions where such a non-intoxicating variant is brewed. So it's like too much of self-sufficiency there. You have shifting cultivation, you have your own liquor, you're not depending on it as also on the outsiders. He was trying to find answers from the religious beliefs why a particular kind of economic system is actually followed. That's where he was giving a very detailed account of the totems these people had followed. We have come across this word before, totem, in the class. Can anybody tell me the meaning of this word? After having finished symbolic anthropology, totem can be defined.
Physical or psychological replica of what is actually present.
physical or psychological replica of
idol or a god or
it.
representing ourselves to the symbol, a river or hill or a tree group or lineage. Based on that, we will practice our religion.
So two things is it. One again, sir. आप बताइए.
It's a physical replica or some psychological entity which is present in the group, which in the absence of the parent group we can use it as a replica.
Okay, maybe it's a replica of whatever the physical or psychological thing that you have popularly in that society, and మీరు చెప్పిందే చెప్పండి.
We'll find totems or hill or a river, basing on that we'll
trace our ancestors. So totems can indicate the group's ancestry. So there are two things that are. Anything else that you would want to add? One, they say, is it is what you believe in the physical form or in the psychological form. You are trying to bring it into a sacred variant, and that sacred variant is a replica of your possibly the ancestors. Who had studied totems in the entire course that we had so far? Where? I remember to have asked you to watch one documentary where there is so much said about the totems, the travel of the thinker, long distances, the one who was also studying the face masks. Boas. If you could recall, there were huge totem pillars. Any replica of totem pillar in our own culture? Any replica of totem pillar in our own culture? Stupa could be, and stupa maybe that's the Buddhist variant. Chappan. The variant of totem pillar.
Can we say what is in front of the temple?
దాన్ని ఏమంటారు తెలుగులో? ధ్వజస్తంభ. అంటే తెలుసు అన్నావా తెలియకన్నావా? తెలిసి ధ్వజస్తంభ. Buddhists say that is their influence. When we write answers for questions like influence of Buddhism on Hinduism, we safely say that Dvajastambha is the influence of stupa from Buddhism. We are here trying to compare Dvajastambha with totem pillar. What is the purpose of Dvajastambha?
It's actually a flag that indicates this temple of religion.
It's something like an indication of the presence of the temple there from a long distance. Okay, it's like a national flag. यहाँ पर boundary है अपना. It actually means a flag. It actually shows that God is here. Be cautious. From a distance, it is announcing to the people. Now, Dvajastambha seems to be what's the material that we generally use? Copper or gold? Mostly copper. If it had been gold and unprotected, most of us would be there at the Dvajastambha only scraping it. Wherever gold plated religious places are there, generally they are protected with glass or some kind of protection mechanism. Fortunately, in India, such kind of temples are very rare. Now, here in this case, these people believe in totems. Remember, sir, most often where totems are existing, there is a presence of a clan system as well. Clan and totems, they go together. If you come to Hinduism, we have clan that is all pervasive, Gotra. Totem may or may not be present. But when it comes to tribes like Malar, They have clans. For every clan, there is a specific totem. And most often, their clans are linked to the ancestors that are non-human, animate ancestors. So you can see the nature very well linked to what is called spirit by him. So what you are worshipping is coming from nature, and whatever you are eating is coming from nature. How you are cultivating is actually decided by a reverence towards the nature and the belief in. And the organization of the society also is based on what we see in the spirit and in the nature. That is, the organization is based on the clan, their habitations are based on their totems, responsibility of protecting the totems is divided among the people. So most of the time what people are doing there is protecting their own totems and gods. It indicates that God needs protection. And they have been protecting their gods. Their residence, the residential area is called Rajmahal Hills. These are the hill malers residing in the Rajmahal region, who believed that their gods lived in the Rajmahal Hills. So when somebody is coming to displace them, several things were happening in the list of questions there. You can see the second one. He was using questionnaires. From the questionnaires, the interpreters were trying to ask questions and fill the questionnaires for the data collection. Diverse views were presented by the people. I told you that before going to the field, he was having in mind only the economic cause. But once he went there with his assistants, he found that there are people who thought that shifting cultivation is their culturally, religiously ordained one. Once they are removed from that particular territory, they would be losing their shifting cultivation areas. Not every region in the country, not every region where they might be asked to resettle, the facility of shifting cultivation may be there. So they might be losing the shifting cultivation areas, and hence economic loss is there. Second kind of an opinion that he found was that certain people were afraid that if removed from their territory, they would come into the purview of many of the mainstream political and legal documents. And one such document could be the excise law. The excise law of the mainstream might be automatically extended to them, because of which their own brewing of liquor would stop and they would have to depend on the others. And there is one other view which believed that once they are displaced, their settlement patterns may not be ensured. This has been the problem till today, wherever displacement is happening. I was mentioning to you some time back about B.D. Sharma's book, Dalits Betrayed, where he was talking about some very significant displacement-based projects in Himachal and elsewhere, where he was trying to bring this point that when you are trying to resettle people, are you ensuring to the people that you would establish, you would retain their social fabric as such? This is one fear. They feared that their community might be scattered. And fourth element is that because Rajmahal Hills are considered to be their places of gods, once they are abandoning those regions, it means that they are abandoning their gods, and that would result in a curse on them. And one other popular reason they found was that they feared the outsiders, including the government officials, neighboring tribes, plains tribes, etc. So they would be coming outside their safe zone and are exposing themselves to all kinds of nasty people which might be dangerous for them. So several such stories, several such opinions when he was getting, that's where he says, he was trying to compare his own ethic opinion with the emic ideologies. I had tried to use this example in ethic and emic when I was explaining that one of the opinions that was held by the researchers may be an opinion of the emic itself. That's where he says that I am no different from them, I am no far from them. my opinion being one of their opinions, it indicates that I somewhere have a link with them. That's where we wrote one statement at that place, if you could recall. Every knowledge in ethnography is emic knowledge. Even ethic is a part of the emic. But then you will have to see to what extent the government and the mainstream are able to understand the problems, how they see may be different. Each one of them is considering one different problem because of the same kind of displacement. But then to what extent the outsiders, the mainstream population, is able to appreciate. So you can actually see it is not one fear, they have tens of fears. So it becomes the mainstream's responsibility to convince, to ensure, to assure the people that see everything will be fine in spite of they leaving their field. This was the work he was doing. And it was at that time he had for the first time given. So today I will be sending to you the Resettlement and Rehabilitation Policy 2007. You can go through those details, very simple kind of text of about 15 different points. Though the document is very long, I brought it down to 15 points that you can take to the exam. So you can say that, you can see that this was a policy of 2007 where government was trying to address certain problems. Everything said and done in that document, still there are lacunae such as they did not take into account the pastoral communities. How is it that you are going to resettle pastoralists? There is also nothing said about what if there are multiple displacements, if the same population is getting displaced a number of times one after the other. To what extent you will ensure them? And the flow of the money, how it is going to happen, kind of things. There are certain lacunae in the document which you can read and see. This foundation of 2007 document was laid by this concept where a very detailed note of about 10 to 12 pages was given by him on resettlement and rehabilitation policy. We are talking about 1960s. At that time itself there are countries on the other side of the globe such as Brazil that were experimenting with different kinds of resettlement programs. He was giving a comparative note on them. So it is not simply an Indian-centered study. He was also trying to get the global examples, was trying to say to us what are the means by which they are trying to test the resettlement and rehabilitation programs. It's like he gives certain examples. How is it that you make the beneficiary a part of the whole scheme? This is theoretically said when we write answers on such kind of topics. It is easy to write than implement it. Sir, from now you are going to face one problem in the class. I'm sure many of you will come back with this. Whenever there is this problem of displacement and people opposing, it shows as if anthropology is anti-government. So the questions that might come to you are that can we take an anti-government stand in our answers? That is number one. And second one is, when anthropology is taking an anti-government stand, is this discipline anti-government? Okay. Now, what the discipline actually calls for is an informed choice. The discipline calls for an informed choice. It is the mutual understanding of the people affected and the people who are inflicting the dangers on the simple societies. See, their understanding mainstream may be a difficult task, but the effort mainstream has to put is because they are the simpler societies, maybe you are in better place to understand them. And when I'm saying that informed choice, this can also be taken as an advantage. This can also be used to play your own game. When particular leaders promise certain things to the people with the prior understanding that I am not going to implement, I only would want to take their consent, nothing can change. The fate of the people is already written. So it is actually commitment on the front of the mainstream to understand. Whether you take up measures for their advantage or not, that's a secondary issue. Many times, understanding the others itself is a challenge. Forget about understanding, many times listening to the others' problems is a big thing. We don't find time to understand, we don't find time to listen to the problems of the people in the situation. This must have happened to you many times personally. So you must be having that longingness, ek baar sun to lo. Later you can actually decide what you want to do. See, when we are speaking about the small things, these are the things that are much beyond the scope. So, to sum up, this is a concept that came out from the problem situation. A concept that is actually related to tribal anthropology, but later became major part of resettlement and rehabilitation policy. He was doing the detailed ethnograph, where he could bring out the interlinkages between economics and religion and the social institutions. He was actually narrating the fears of the tribals. Though he was addressing Malar alone, similar fears can be seen across all the tribal communities who must have been experiencing similar situation at that point of time. See, this was not going to end with more and more tribal communities being dragged into the mainstream society. This kind of a problem is bound to occur for a long time. Of course, we have reached a time where many of the tribal communities either have lost their cultural identity or they have totally vanished out of our population map. But even the ones that are left out, they are not far from such kind of situations. So the concept becomes a vitality even in today's times. It is not simply about the tribal populations that are facing resettlement or rehabilitation. Recently, there was one paper submitted by Hyderabad Central University, wherein it is said that they are actually using the NMS complex of LP Vidyarthi, but they are trying to see how the slum population is facing the problems of resettlement. So the population in question might be changing. So the population in question may be something to do with a disadvantage. This would try to give us the techniques to understand them, and maybe perhaps it may suggest ways to find a way out. For that situation, he had suggested a way out. You can apply, superimpose the same thing at different. See, the metro, when it is coming up, so many settlements are actually going off. Maybe one can apply this and see there whether an emic view would suit or an etic view suits. And then you may perhaps come to a broader conclusion of what to do. Because whenever a question comes, he will not ask you simply an MS complex. Those days are gone. A short question of an MS complex where you are giving more than your own 100% to write the answer. What he is expecting now is the utility of this concept, in the contemporary times. That you would be writing as an assignment for me. NMS complex, its utility in the contemporary times. The basic reading you are doing from AN02. Some case studies I will be sharing with you. Based on that, you will prepare a note and submit. That I think is the assignment number 7. I repeat my question. NMS complex, its utility in contemporary times. We used this name in our classes earlier. We said that Vidyarthi was mostly associated with tribal studies, but here we see that he is also talking about the mainstream population. Sacred Complex, that is the book he wrote, Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya, 1961. The term Hindu becomes a controversy, of course. Is it that you are declaring Gaya as a Hindu? Or is it that you are writing only about the Hindu society? In fact, he is doing that. But one can apply to the rest of the religions also. The underlying theme of this concept is cultural diffusion. You can see things like culture area concept applying here. So he is typically of this kind. When there is a question, in response to the question, he is giving concepts. I was saying that in response to questions and situations, he is giving concepts. The question he was trying to answer to himself was, how was it possible that at a time when communication and transport was not so very developed, in the pre-industrial, even early agricultural times in India, how was it possible that there was a larger uniformity in culture? That was the question. I repeat my question. At a time when communication and transport were not fully developed, at a pre-industrial and early agricultural stage of ancient India, how was it possible that the Indian subcontinent was having a largely uniform culture? He is actually talking about the same Hindu or Sanatana Dharma that was more or less similarly followed throughout the subcontinent. There was nothing like a vehicle of diffusion. There was nothing like a vehicle of diffusion like the newspaper or a printing press or something like major transport facilities there. There was nothing like a radio or television, but things were happening as if everybody had studied in the same school. And that was where he was trying to get an answer. We were asking this question to you in one of our earlier classes also, and you were kind enough to respond to me at that time by saying that it was pilgrimages that were responsible for bringing uniformity. He was doing this exercise initially in Gaya. We'll talk about what he had done there. But later he extended similar kind of a work to several other temple cities like Dwarika, Mathura, etc., across the country. He found things to be almost similar. Being similar in several ways, he found distinctiveness in certain other ways. For example, Shraddha Karma, the one that he always loved to study about, Shraddha Karma was different from one pilgrimage site to the other. And that decided who the pilgrims could be. If at all, the kind of Shraddha Karma that is performed in that particular temple town is what you largely follow, you would be more interested in visiting that particular pilgrimage site. So the visitors, the pilgrimage business depends on what the pilgrimage site offers. What say? The business of pilgrimage is decided by what the pilgrimage site offers. What is your most loving pilgrimage site, if at all you had gone, or you would want to go to? Tirupati. Same pinch. Inka? What else? Birla Temple. Balaji పేరు తీసేసి బిర్లా పేరు పెట్టుకొని. Pilgrimages actually tell people, train people about how the temples have to be constructed. Pilgrimages give guidelines on construction of the sites, the postures, the way you are actually trying to lay the foundation of the temples there. So the structures are the replicas. So at so many places we see the replicas of these temples. Amazingly, we see the similarity in most of these aspects there. Including the way they sit, the color of the stone that is used, the kind of clothing that the god wears, kind of things. Many times we get engrossed into material imitation of the godly places. But somewhere something will be missing, the heart will be missing there. You can perhaps construct the same kind of Tirumala temple. Hyderabad is actually dotted by so many hills. You can find 7 such hills and you can put him there. But what will be missing is the spirit. Many times we feel that. Sometimes when I walk into the class, I feel something is missing. Maybe he is not there in the class, or maybe some soul is missing, some heart is somewhere missing. There is that incompleteness. I don't know whether that happens to you. Sometimes you walk into your house, you feel that something is really not there. I feel it many times when I see some answers. That is my regular. So when a student asks, what is missing? What else I have to write? I have written all the facts that you have told me. Certain things you can't explain. I hope you are understanding. Certain things you really can't explain. Why? There's something that is not giving you that pleasure. One of my school teachers, she used to teach us essay writing. So her essay writing techniques were so very elaborate. So she used to give us one essay to be written after 15 or 20 days of time. So you will have to prepare in these 15 to 20 days of time to prepare your essay. So she would give each of us one bag, a plastic bag or a paper bag. And she gives good lot of small pieces of paper. So it's like you are living with that essay for those 15-20 days. So it's like whichever thought comes to you on that particular topic, you encounter something on that topic, you write, you scribble on the paper, you put it in that. This exercise will go on whenever you are talking to people about that particular thing. Whatever thought you get, you write on the paper, put it in that bag. So after a set amount of time, 10 days, 15 days, you pick out all of them, try to organize them, and try to prepare one kind of an essay. I don't know whether you have tried this kind of a variety. Most of us are actually busy buying essay books from the market, unique publications, kind of things. And then that's what she used to tell. When we used to write, what is missing is the heart there. At that point of time, we wouldn't understand what a 7th class goer or 8th class student would understand about a heart missing. It's always missing in our writing, kind of things. So basically here, there are a good lot of places that he worked, and I want to give you the basic definition and a list of people who, that is the elaborate definition given by him. Sacred complex is a happy synthesis of sacred geography, practices, specialists of a Hindu place of pilgrimage, reflecting a level of continuity, compromise, combination of little and great tradition. What is interesting is the word happy, a happy synthesis. So the happiness that you find when you go to the pilgrimage center, with such a big queue, standing in the queues for tens of hours, only to have a glimpse of Balaji. The god of wealth. Interestingly, when we go to any temple town, you keep writing, I do my talking. Whenever we go to a temple, along with the principal deity, you have the sidekicks. The smaller gods also, the other gods also. So it's like a bonus. I go to see the big god, the principal god, I have the other people also. You go to see Hanuman, you have Ramji also. You go to the temple of Lord Shiva, bonus you get Nandi. In most of the temples have on the sidelines Lakshmi. If not anything else, you would go to the temple for Lakshmi. Memorize the definitions, sir. I see many students making a mistake there. Year after year, people write the exam, do not clear primarily because they are not focusing on what is the basic thing. If you are not in a position to define a concept, there is no use writing an essay on it. How many ever examples you try to give, how much ever you try to explain to the examiner, he wouldn't listen to you. See, because we are evaluating papers here, we would try to somehow bear with the student, read the entire essay, try to give you the remarks or whatever. Sometimes, when I say that I don't want to give marks, people would fight. Why don't you give marks? It's as if you are fighting with UPSC. See, in the first paragraph itself, the examiner will understand whether you understood the question or not. If your definition itself is faulty, he wouldn't want to go further. But I am doing that favor for you. I am going further. I am trying to read what kind of. But when I clearly write down there that I don't want to give marks to this answer, you understand that there's something extremely wrong there. There's people who are mailing, you haven't given marks to this question. It's as if, you are my successor and I have done a grave injustice to you by not writing things in my will, kind of a thing. Memorize the definitions. This has to be your regular thing. I told to some of these students, you have your small scribbling pad where you write down definitions, where you scribble the examples, draw pictures and keep them with you. Whenever there is time, you try to go through them again and again. Because, see, after all, when you are trying to look for those 300 marks or so, this doesn't happen so easily. You'll have to understand memorizing is very, very important. So there's a good list of studies by the other thinkers, other sociologists. You may kindly take them down. Saraswati, not a female sociologist, a male sociologist. He was doing these studies. Holy Circuit of Nimsar, temple organization in Goa, I really love this. That he went there to study temples. Myth and reality of a classical, if at all somebody said that maybe he is going there to study the Portuguese churches, kind of things, understandable. But you're going there to study temples of all the things. Can I go? And then, myth and reality of a classical cultural tradition. Those are the other ones. Sacred complex of Ratanpur, Lingaraj temple by Mahapatra, Chamundeshwari temple, Tarakeshwari temple, whatever may be the temple, it has the same kind of chemistry. Though Hinduism also believes that God is there everywhere, going to the temples is insisted for the feel of the God. It's like for the UPSC atmosphere going to Delhi. It's a general statement that we see. There's no atmosphere here. Bite enthunte inti lopal lepothe atmosphere should be there in your mind. Otherwise people are clearing the exams from the jungles also. So now you are able to give your 2 or 3 hours of study to anthro, because last time when somebody was asking me kya karna hai, not getting time. This was one of the reasons why I would tell the students that you, at a point of time, you do only one subject. Either you do general studies or you do your optional. But you know, as you are getting aged, it becomes difficult. Suppose somebody is starting at a very early age, that is understandable. But with time not being there in your pocket, very difficult. And hence there is no choice. You will have to do your optional as well as this one. Now, he was actually saying 2 things. One, describing the structural arrangement of the temple. He was describing the structural arrangement of the temple. Second one is how the pilgrimages were instrumental in cultural diffusion. Visit of the pilgrimages is a combination of direct and indirect diffusion. Visit of the pilgrimages is a combination of direct and indirect diffusion. Pilgrims are physically going to the temple site. They are getting that first-hand information about what is actually happening in the temple site. They are coming back to replicate in their own places. Purposes of visit of the temple site, etc., they are all different ones again. That's not a subject matter of Vidyarthi. He was only looking at how the sacred things are actually spreading. When he was writing on the sacred element of the temples, he was also equally influenced by people like Durkheim, who spoke about something called sacred vis-a-vis the ones that are outside the realm of religion, that are called profane. In yesterday's class, after the class, somebody was asking difference between secular and ritual. I was trying to say there that secular refers to, see, though the word secularism has different meanings, in that context what it meant is secular is outside the sphere of religion. Ritual most often is considered to be within the sphere of religion. Of course, there can be political rituals, economic rituals, they are all different ones. But then fundamentally, ritual is much closer to the word sacred. Anything that is associated with religion and God is sacred. And the ones outside the purview of the religion, outside the boundaries of the religion, we call them secular or profane. He was also agreeing with this idea that sacredness is contagious. Sacredness is lost as you go away from the God. That is the reason why we time and again try to be present on particular days with the God in the temple. That's very much important. See, he also doesn't miss the God because of the sacred. Just have a look at this. These are the 3 things. Sacred geography, sacred practices and specialists. Any sacred complex meaning the temple city, temple town, whatever, is a combination of these 3 things. His presentation looks to be very interesting because he's not simply looking at what consists of the sacredness there. He is also talking about how urbanization is taking place. So any sacred place of worship, the sacred town, is a combination of sacred practices, geography, and specialists. So in most of the Hindu places of worship, we see to it that we don't go in chapel, we don't wear footwear into the temple, which is considered to be a disrespect, because we consider that to be a sacred geography. We will at one point of time come back to see certain other religions where this element of the so-called sacredness that you see in material is not there. Hinduism is surprisingly different. If everywhere God is there, you are not supposed to wear chapel everywhere. But then when you are going into the temple, you are not wearing. Because maybe for a long period of time he stays there. Or maybe God also has to be present at one place where he can listen to all the requests and problems of the people. जैसे कि दरबार हो गया. Temple is something like a darbar of the God, where you are going there, putting your demands and problems. That's a real darbar actually. At many places of worship, I'm not simply talking about Hindu places of worship, in many religions of course, the practice of writing down your request and putting there. And in some of the places, apart from the hundi for the money, you also have a container where you put your demands. इस बार prelims तो निकल जाए. God will say, okay, I'll give you prelims. You never asked for the clearing of the exam. Actually, your wording has to be properly there when you are praying to the God. You'll have to be very clear that this year you'll have to get into service, and also specifically what service. There shall not be any ambiguity there. See, at the end of the day, he has fulfilled your wish by passing you in preliminary. But it is of no use. So you will have to frame your sentences very properly. I was writing this in one of the scripts. Frame the sentences properly. I was reading just before coming here one of the scripts. I found that whatever ideas that we were discussing in the class, almost all the ideas are there. But there is a grave problem of language. What was interesting was that I could understand what he was writing. In linguistic anthropology, we will come to certain paragraphs. I will give you certain paragraph. Not a single word is correct, but you will understand the entire thing. Maybe because mind is already forming certain images based on what you are seeing there. So certain mistakes are, or a lot of mistakes are getting unnoticed. Now let me come back here. Sacred geography specialist. At Gaya, he is looking at this. At Gaya, he was drawing this kind of a picture. Look at that. That has to be concentric circle, but I made it for my own convenience that way. At the center is the Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorum of the principal God. The purest, the most sacred. Hence, polluted people like us are not allowed. topics like agrarian social system, caste mobility will be discussed in the next class. Especially for agrarian social system, there is a huge dearth of information. So you should see to it that you take note properly. That's how he classifies the pilgrimage center. The innermost one is the center, outermost could be kshetra. Kshetra may be a lot of secular zone outside the sacred one. It's something like this. He describes a cluster. Cluster is just outside the Garbhagriha, where other gods are also sitting. Maybe that the principal god would take some time to give you darshan. In the meantime, the pilgrims may get busy with the other gods. I haven't actually discussed these things in the classes of Kama, etc. What occurs outside the Garbhagriha? What exists outside the Garbhagriha? Many of the temples in India, outside the Garbhagriha, you have series of bhangimas. I really love the Osho's interpretation of that. The question was, why in the temple so many nude pictures are there? So the answer given by him was that, see, these the so-called nude pictures, you find them outside the Garbhagriha, they are not there inside. I understand it differently. I am trying to tell you his view. For him, you can reach the God only if you could get away from all this, get rid of all this. If at all you are busy with them, the queue goes off and you are there. All these are outside the Garbhagriha. Meaning that unless the Kama has to be given up, unless this is given up, you will not be able to reach the God. For me especially, this is an entertainment so that, till the God comes, okay, aram se, people are properly kept busy. In this kind of a situation, in the clusters when so many other gods are there, you are actually having an opportunity to see several other gods too. As you are going away from the Garbhagriha, this is typically the way you can look at your own self, what your psychological and maybe gestural condition is at the time of going into the temple and when you are coming out. So much of godliness there, so much of obedience, so many other all positive traits as you are going to visit the God, till you properly put your demands across to him. Once it is done, I always used to wonder, why is it that there is a rule in the temple that you should not leave just like that? After you have seen God, you will have to sit there for some time. Then I realized you will have to have place to eat prasadam. Maybe you would finish that thing and then properly you get out of it. As you are going out, one after the other, all polluting things once again start coming into your mind. So see what is being played in the music system while you are going to the temple and while you are coming out. It speaks volumes. It is not simply that, this is actually to show from the culture area school. Majority of the sacred things exist at the sacred center, that is the proper Garbhagriha, and as you are coming out, you have several other things substituting. Just have a look at this. Secular geography surrounds the sacred geography. He was trying to explain this in the context of emergence of the temple cities. There are many temple towns in India. They came into existence primarily due to the temple there. So it's as simple as the Durga, the Balaji, if they were not there, that city might not have come into existence. The town might not have come into existence. But what happens is, for any pilgrimage center to survive, there has to be certain secular activities also. You're not simply going there for the god. When you're going there, you will have to do other things also. So as a result, several commercial establishments, non-sacred establishments keep coming in. But over a period of time, the sacred geography reduces and the secular geography picks up. This is the other phase of urbanization. Primary urbanization may be because of the sacred activity itself. But later several other things, schools, colleges and other things, several other things, they start coming up, and then this sacred thing becomes a smaller one and the secular element expands. Maybe that primarily that was the whole thing. He was actually talking about it not simply in terms of one particular sacred city. He was talking about this in the context of how the mindset of people also changes. At a psychological level, with time, the inner sacred zone may be substituted by a lot that is not sacred. We are safely calling it secular, with substituting one positive with the other positive. So he was trying to find an answer. The reason for all larger similarity in Indian subcontinent is primarily because of the travel, etc., etc. See, when it comes to utility of any concept, this concept helped us understand cultural diffusion in Indian subcontinent. And the same technique can be used to understand any other pilgrimage sites in the world. How sacredness vanishes when one goes away from the pilgrimage site. It's as simple as the Dikshas that we take up 40 days, 1 month Diksha. Dikshalo ఉన్నందువారు స్వామివారు బాగా స్ట్రిక్ట్గా ఫాలో అవుతారు. Once the Diksha is done, whatever that you have lost in the 40 days, you will have to achieve that in the next few days. The question is, why is it that sacredness is having so very limited time span, limited spatial spread? That's where the thing is. Maybe God also thought that, okay, I am safe in the pilgrimage sites. My supremacy prevails there. Let me not go everywhere and see whatever untoward that is happening. So let me be confined to the sacred zones, kind of. Similar kind of an examination was done by the Islamic scholars in the Islamic sites, and then Christian scholars in Christian pilgrimage sites. The only problem he had used was the word Hindu. That was the criticism, but otherwise, see, for every concept you will have to write the utility of it. Here the utility was sacred complex. This can be given as an example for culture area school. Not a controversial one. It was out of his own inquisitiveness. He was also trying to address different kind of varieties there. How sacred specialists were different from one place to the other. For example, Gaya, there were Brahmin communities who were having something like a Jajmani relation with the pilgrims that were visiting. And this was a continuous process. This was giving them an assured employment also. He was also reflecting on certain unseasons in the pilgrimages. You have unseasons also. Examination season is a season of pilgrimages. The other time is unseason for the god. So in the unseason times, how the psychological and economic impact will be on the people who are living on the pilgrims. So it is not simply an economic relation, it is not simply a ritual relation, it is a combination of so many things. Once you opt out of the god, see how much of humanity is getting affected. Forget about God. Once you are deciding that I would opt out of God, so much of humanity is at the stake. That is the summary of this. I hope you have understood what I wanted to communicate. Fill your chart. We were doing 3 topics. We were writing on Jajmani system, we were talking about NMS complex, and the third one is sacred complex. As far as your notes is concerned, Jajmani system, you are depending on the class note, and for the remaining 2, you are largely looking at AN02. And sir, because I forgot to make a mention elsewhere, you write here in the assignments column the thing that you had to study. One was H.D. Sankalia from the mail document, and the other one was marriage payments from AN03. These are to be studied back home. Have a good time. I was asking you to study, and one other thing that you had to study before the next class was tribe caste continuum. That I will be discussing later.